The question of the self, what it is, how it forms, and how one lives authentically stands at the heart of Western philosophical and psychological thought. Two towering figures who address this issue in distinct yet intersecting ways are Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th-century German philosopher, and Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychologist of the early 20th century. While Nietzsche's work paved the way for existential and postmodern philosophies, Jung offered an in-depth psychological framework rooted in science and myth. Despite their differing methods, both thinkers shared a deep concern with the evolution and realization of the self. This article explores the key differences and convergences between Jung's and Nietzsche's views of the self, touching on their philosophical underpinnings, psychological theories, and cultural impact. Nietzsche and the birth of the modern self. Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844–1900, was a philosopher, philologist, and cultural critic best known for his critiques of morality, religion, and traditional philosophy. His concept of the self was radical for its time. Instead of seeing it as a fixed, stable essence, Nietzsche viewed it as a dynamic, evolving force, a becoming rather than a being. The will to power. Central to Nietzsche's idea of the self is the will to power, a fundamental drive not merely for survival or reproduction but for growth, dominance, and self-overcoming. For Nietzsche, the self is not a passive recipient of external conditioning but an active force seeking to transcend its current limitations. The will to power leads to the idea of the Übermensch, Overman or Superman, a figure who redefines values and creates meaning in a world where traditional structures, especially religious ones, have collapsed. In this context, Nietzsche introduces the concept of the death of God, a metaphor for the decline of spiritual authority and the need for individuals to create their moral frameworks. Master versus slave morality. Nietzsche divides moral systems into master morality and slave morality. Master morality arises from strength and self-affirmation, while slave morality originates from weakness and resentment. He believes that modern societies are dominated by slave morality, which stifles individual excellence and the flourishing of the self. To Nietzsche, becoming a true self means rejecting externally imposed values and courageously embracing one's instincts, drives, and creative powers. Carl Jung and the individuated self. Carl Jung, 1875–1961, a Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, approached the self from a psychological rather than philosophical standpoint. For Jung, the self is both a psychological reality and a spiritual archetype. It is not merely the sum of conscious experiences but a totality that includes the conscious ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. The process of individuation. At the heart of Jung's thought is individuation, a lifelong psychological process through which a person integrates unconscious elements into conscious awareness, thereby achieving a harmonious and authentic self. Individuation involves confronting and assimilating various aspects of the psyche, including the shadow, the repressed, often darker parts of the personality. The anima/animus, the contrasexual elements of the psyche. The self, the archetype of wholeness and integration. For Jung, becoming oneself means embracing the totality of one's psyche, not just the socially acceptable or conscious parts. Archetypes and the collective unconscious. Jung introduced the idea of the collective unconscious, a level of the unconscious mind shared among all humans and composed of archetypes, universal symbols, and motifs found in myths, dreams, and religions. Unlike Freud, who emphasized personal history and sexuality, Jung emphasized the timeless and symbolic dimensions of the psyche. The self-archetype represents the unity and integration of all aspects of the personality. It is both the psyche's center and circumference, encompassing the ego and unconscious elements. Key differences in their views of the self. While both Nietzsche and Jung emphasized the importance of becoming oneself, they diverged in several significant ways. 1. Nature of the self. Nietzsche, the self is a project, a task to be accomplished through will and creative power. It is not given but must be forged, often in opposition to societal norms and religious values. Jung, the self is an innate potential within the psyche, a natural process of unfolding that can be guided through self-awareness and symbolic understanding. 2. Role of religion. Nietzsche, religion, especially Christianity, is an oppressive force that promotes weakness and denies life. The death of God is necessary for the birth of a new, autonomous self. Jung. While critical of religious dogma, Jung saw spiritual traditions as symbolic systems that could aid individuation. He often drew upon religious imagery to describe psychological processes. 3. Attitude toward the unconscious. Nietzsche. Although he anticipated some psychological concepts, Nietzsche largely viewed instincts and drives in a philosophical, existential light rather than as part of a structured unconscious. Jung. The unconscious is a central part of the self, full of symbols, archetypes, and energies that must be integrated for wholeness. 4. Ethics and values. Nietzsche rejected universal moral codes favoring a personal, life-affirming ethic rooted in strength and creativity. Jung valued ethical responsibility and saw individuation aligning personal behavior with more profound psychological and spiritual truths. Shared ground, the call to authenticity. Despite their differences, Jung and Nietzsche are deeply committed to authenticity and self-realization. Both reject conformism and challenge individuals to face the unknown within and outside themselves. Confronting the shadow. Jung's concept of the shadow parallels Nietzsche's idea of the repressed will and instincts. Both thinkers encourage confrontation with the darker aspects of the self, not indulgence in them but integration in a healthy and constructive manner. Nietzsche's writings on the abyss, the idea that when you look into the abyss also looks into you, resonate with Jung's insistence that one must face the unconscious to grow. Critique of modernity. Both were critical of modern society's tendencies, Nietzsche in terms of herd morality and passive nihilism, Jung in terms of spiritual emptiness and over-identification with rationalism. Each, in his own way, foresaw the alienation and psychological fragmentation of modern individuals. Legacy and influence. Nietzsche profoundly influenced existentialism, postmodernism, and modern literature. His thoughts on self-informed thinkers include Jean-Paul Sartre, Michel Foucault, and Jung, who read Nietzsche extensively, and even analyzed Thus Spoke Zarathustra in seminars. Jung's legacy lives on in psychology, spirituality, and the arts. His emphasis on symbols, myths, and dreams contributed to fields as diverse as religious studies, depth therapy, and narrative analysis. Many modern self-help, mindfulness, and therapeutic practices reflect Jungian ideas, while Nietzsche's calls to self-overcoming echo in motivational and philosophical discourse. Toward a unified vision? Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche offer two profound, contrasting, yet complementary visions of the self. Where Nietzsche calls for the courageous creation of the self in a world stripped of absolutes, Jung urges the integration of the psyche's many parts into a unified whole. Nietzsche teaches that to live authentically, one must break free from societal and religious constraints. Jung, meanwhile, shows that wholeness lies not in rejecting tradition outright but in transforming and internalizing it through symbolic understanding and inner work. Together, these thinkers provide a rich, multifaceted approach to what it means to be truly oneself. In a time of identity crises and existential anxieties, their work remains urgently relevant, inviting us to question who we are and become who we might yet be.